From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. Uruguay and Mexico are holding an international conference on Thursday on hopes of bringing a peaceful solution to the political situation in Venezuela. The talks will be attended by Bolivia and the 14 countries of the Community of Caribbean States, or CARICOM. On Wednesday, the foreign ministers of Uruguay and Mexico held a preparation meeting. They insisted that the talks should come without conditions and under the non-interference principle.
The first thing is to talk. If there is no communication, we can do anything. Communication is essential. Then the negotiation will come, and finally, the implementation.
I think that the more conditions we impose, the more difficult the dialogue gets to be carried out. If conditions are imposed, parties should agree, and non-intervention is important.
The spokesperson for UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says that he supports the meeting on Venezuela. According to Stefan Dujarric, Guterres has contacted the promoters of the meeting to discuss the main issues. The UN supports the efforts to find a political solution in Venezuela and has offered to mediate Venezuela's government and the opposition talks. On Wednesday, President Nicolás Maduro addressed members of the Bolivarian Armed Forces in Maracaibo. Maduro said the U.S. government wants a military intervention in the country, but that Venezuela will defend itself.
El señor Donald Trump.
The President of the United States, Mr. Donald Trump, has said he is prepared for a military intervention in Venezuela, as if Venezuela does not have its own defenders. This is nothing but a show of strength on their part, a dangerous one at that. We have been asking ourselves lately, what is the cause for this war that Donald Trump wants? Why against a peaceful and noble country like Venezuela? Are we a threat to the United States? Do we have weapons of mass destruction? Do we have the capacity to invade other nations? Those aren't the reasons. The reason is our oil and our gold and our natural gas. Recently, United States National Security Advisor John Bolton told the Venezuelan armed forces to carry out a coup d'etat, to reject the Constitution and to follow the White House's rules. But I tell them, where is the Commander-in-Chief of the Venezuelan Armed Forces? In the White House? Who is the Commander-in-Chief of the Bolivarian Armed Forces? Donald Trump? Who has the morals, the spirit, and carries the legacy of the Bolivarian Armed Forces? Is John Bolton the Venezuelan Commander-in-Chief?
And President Maduro sent a message to ask for support from people in the United States against military intervention.
Hands off Venezuela.
Hands off Venezuela. It's Wednesday, February 6th. In a massive way, the collection of 10 million signatures has begun. This is a letter to the U.S. people asking for solidarity and support for peace in Venezuela and to condemn the threats of military invasion from Donald Trump against Venezuela. This is a very nice letter where the Venezuelan people set its position. You can sign here. These notebooks are going to be all over the country. You can join. This is for everyone. It's for peace, because we have just cause. We have peace. We are good people, and to the U.S., we send all our love and solidarity.
So let's look at this project to collect signatures to support Venezuela.
Bolivar Square in central Caracas has been a location for the Venezuelan voice to be heard. More than just signatures, these are the voices of a nation that has chosen to defend its peace and sovereignty.
We need to defend our homeland. We carry Bolivar and Chavez's blood. These gentlemen in the U.S. cannot come here to steal our resources and our sovereignty. Here, the people are in charge.
Venezuelan people are responding to the hegemonic U.S. policy. Former U.S. President Barack Obama had already declared Venezuela a threat for U.S. homeland security.
I invite you to come to Venezuela to see what our reality is like. It's not how some media is reporting. That's not real. I invite you to come, to talk to us for peace. Venezuelans are a people of peace.
No to sanctions, no to the blockade, no to the invasion were the most repeated mottos. However, the ambitions of the U.S., including taking control of the country's important oil resources.
I want to support President Nicolás Maduro against these attacks promoted by the U.S. Our people are peaceful and democratic, and we are against the blockade. We are asking for non-interference in our domestic issues.
The goal will be to collect at least 10 million signatures to be sent to the White House in Washington.
Now to Colombia, where President Iván Duque has launched a new security and defense policy. One of its key points is to stop negotiations with armed groups. Duque also says he will not allow bilateral ceasefires. This comes as 123 social leaders and human rights defenders have been murdered under the current government, and as the FARC party and communities have reported daily attacks, threats, and forced displacements with little response from the government.
The security policy, in its dissuasive emphasis, also focuses on having cooperation with other countries to fight against national and transnational crime. It also sees Colombia with the capacities to exercise a better border control.
Former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has been handed a new sentence of nearly 13 years by a Brazilian court. This is the second sentence for Lula in connection with corruption allegations. This time, a Brazilian court ruled that Lula illegally benefited from renovations on a property made by construction company Odebrecht, among others. The property wasn't owned by him. Lula has already spent over 300 days behind bars due to a similar sentence. And in social media, the president of the Workers' Party, Gleisi Hoffmann, condemned Lula's new sentence. Hoffmann says Lula is greater than his executioners and that his incarceration makes him a better candidate for a Nobel Peace Prize. And former presidential candidate of the Socialism and Liberty Party in Brazil, Guilherme Boulos, has also expressed his solidarity with Lula. Via Twitter, Boulos rejected the bias of Brazilian justice, saying the judiciary is against Lula. He has also called the former president a political prisoner. At least 2 people have been killed in Rio de Janeiro due to heavy rains. Brazilian authorities are recommending that Rio residents stay inside until the bad weather passes. But more rain is expected in the city until the end of the week.
I have never seen so much destruction. I've been here for 8 years, and it's the first time I've seen this.
I have never seen anything like this. It's the first time I have seen this, and I'm terrified.
More stories coming up. We'll be back.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Get Your Body. Tuesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Human rights organizations have rejected a bill proposed by some Peruvian lawmakers to shield police from legal responsibility if they cause injuries or death while using their weapons. Let's learn more about this.
The bill was proposed by the Popular Revolutionary Alliance Party. It says that police members who cause injuries or death while at work will not have to face legal action, and the legislation is supported by several of the parties.
We support the police when they have to use their weapons. We have even included the principle of proportionality by which the defense, the order, human rights, and on top of that, the impact that it can generate in the society must come first. We are supporting police in that sense.
In the capital Lima, the perception of insecurity exceeds 88%, according to the National Institute of Statistics. So people say they mainly support the bill as a way to fight against crime.
It is the right to use their weapons if required.
We feel helpless, so we must agree on that. Police officers must use their legal weapons.
They need to use it in self-defense. It's either the police who kills the criminal or the other way around.
But according to human rights organizations, this is a populist measure which does not directly combat public insecurity and could give rise to justifications for excesses and violations of human rights.
We are going to see situations as the one we have been investigating lately, such as the one in Piura. There was a death squad composed by police officers who used their weapons. And many people can even justify that, right? But we believe that in a democratic country, every authority that uses any kind of weapon, whether it is a gun or whatever, requires a legal framework.
If the bill is passed, it could also include the right of police members of using their weapon against demonstrators during protests.
In Haiti, President Jovenel Moïse has declared a state of economic emergency in the country. The decree aims to help reduce the cost of essential goods through subsidies, promoting financing for the agricultural sector, boosting economic activities, and strengthening social programs. Moïse already approved the suspension of certain custom exceptions until the end of the tax year in September, but Haiti faces a deficit of over $128 million. Two U.S. senators say Puerto Rico should be included in any disaster assistance package prepared by Congress. Senators Bob Mendez and Catherine Cortez Masto sent a letter to the Senate and the House of Representatives with their request. They say they want to ensure that all citizens receive the support they need to recover and rebuild. This comes in contrast with President Donald Trump's approach to limit resources for the island. International organizations in Colombia are calling on President Iván Duque's government to take action to stop the ongoing murders of social leaders. We have more in this report.
In the face of the wave of assassinations of social leaders, human rights organizations and experts have conducted a study to determine the patterns of crimes against the Afro-descent, peasant, and indigenous populations.
The phenomenon of the killings of social leaders is rising at the hands of local criminal gangs. They have links with armed groups on a national level and are outsourced so they can commit those murders and authorities register them as common crimes without examining that they have a direct connection with illegal armed groups.
The study, called Killing of Social Leaders on the Post Agreement, also reveals the apparent participation of the Colombian state.
Prosecutors have put ELN first, but we don't see them as the biggest aggressors. In the report, we registered 8 cases of assassinations at the hands of the ELN and 2 by the EPL, while 11 leaders were killed by the members of the army, and according to reports, 3 leaders were killed by the police.
Since the agreement, there have been multiple armed actors that have occupied territories where social investment and peace agreements have never arrived.
The state has failed to occupy the territories led by those organizations that are reintegrated, and some of them are half-integrated, because there is a recycling of paramilitary groups from 2005 and 2007, and there is also dissent.
In Colombia, there's a new political landscape linked to the next election of mayors and governors. That's why experts predict that the murders of political, social, and environmental leaders will rise dramatically. The task of President Iván Duque will be to implement the measures that the United Nations, social movements, and the Ombudsman have recommended.
By a unanimous vote, Ecuador's National Assembly passed a bill for the prevention and punishment of violence in sports. Our correspondent Denise Herrera has more from Quito.
For the first time in Ecuador's history, the Sports Commission of the National Assembly has passed a law that seeks to prevent violence in sports. Those who commit acts of violence will be punished. The new legislation has 32 articles, 2 general provisions, 3 transitory provisions, and has reformed Article 397 of the Criminal Code.
We, as an assembly, have worked on a law that seeks to not only punish, but also to prevent through education, communication, in addition to establishing clear requirements with sports organizers, so we can prevent violent events from taking place in Ecuadorian sports.
However, some lawmakers have criticized parts of the law. Lawmaker Luis Fernando Molina says the legislation specifies penalty, but it doesn't provide for complete safety in sports places.
It was the first step, but insufficient. Insufficient because fans' rights and obligations weren't included as part of the security plans, especially with the need to have rights and obligations. I think it is a first step to eradicate it, but in the preventive form, it is lacing, and this opens up room for debate.
On the other hand, the Sports Commission is also working to reform the sports law. According to the president of the Commission, it's likely the entire law will be amended. The Commission also received several opinions from different sectors, such as sports journalism.
In the elections of the National Federation, mainly in cycling, there have been many weaknesses. I think we should choose people who like the activity, and especially choose people who will do something for sports.
The Assembly can issue the best sports laws, can reform the best articles, we can create unmatched chapters, but nothing can move forward. There will be no progress, and the athletes will probably get worse if we don't stop the nationalization of sports.
The recent passed law calls for imprisonment from 1 to 10 days with a fine equivalent to 25% of the united basic remuneration of the workers in general. It also prohibits people entering sporting events while carrying knives, flares, among other weapons. Denise Herrera, Telesur Quito, Ecuador.
In Argentina, a replica of an herbivorous dinosaur that lived 140 million years ago is being exhibited. The reproduction is made out of a species that was found in the Patagonia region. The discovery includes a row of spines on the dinosaur's back. According to scientists, these long and sharp spines were used to detect possible predators. We now go to the U.S. as President Donald Trump has nominated a vocal critic of the World Bank to head the financial institution. Treasury Department official David Malpass once worked as chief economist at the investment bank Bear Stearns, which collapsed in 2008 during the financial crisis. If approved, he will replace Yim Yong Kim, who announced his resignation in January. The World Bank has had a person from the U.S. as a head since its founding after World War II, but many countries have challenged this unwritten arrangement. We're taking one last break, but stay with us.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on Telesur. an occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives, Friday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. An anti-Brexit protester has jumped in front of British Prime Minister Theresa May's motorcade on Thursday. This happened as May arrived in Brussels to plead with the European Union leaders to change the Brexit deal she negotiated last year. The London Parliament voted to renegotiate the deal after it rejected May's agreement by a large majority. And unless lawmakers approve a new plan, Britain will leave the EU on March 29 without a transition arrangement. 2 months have passed since hackers exposed the Integrity Initiative as a propaganda organization funded by the UK government. Our correspondent Pablo Navarrete explains what this initiative is.
In December 2018, a covert operation conducted by the British state was discovered. Created in 2015, the so-called Integrity Initiative is run by British military intelligence officers and forms part of the Institute for Statecraft, an organisation funded by the British Foreign Ministry, NATO and the US State Department, amongst others.
They call themselves an anti-disinformation network, and they see themselves as targeting what they say is malign Russian influence in Western states. In reality, it's a propaganda network of journalists, former and current military officials, politicians, researchers and others who are targeting mostly Western audiences to get them to shape their worldview towards Russia and elsewhere.
The so-called Integrity Initiative has intervened in British politics with, for example, Twitter comments calling the Labour Party's socialist leader Jeremy Corbyn a useful idiot who has helped the Russian government's cause. There is also evidence that the Integrity Initiative has intervened in national security issues in Spain.
There was a chap called Pedro Baños who was the preferred candidate, as I understand it, to become the director of their Homeland Security Department, and apparently he's made some remarks along the lines of Russia doesn't pose a particular threat to Spain's interests, and it was on that basis, I believe, that their Spanish cluster of tame journalists, as it were sort of activated.
The Spanish cluster reportedly initiated the Moncloa campaign to attack Baños once it learned he was the Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez's first choice. The British Labour MP Chris Williamson has written to Sanchez outlining the allegations of the Integrity Initiative's interference in Spain. He is yet to receive a reply. There has also been a relative absence of media coverage around the activity of the Integrity Initiative in the British media.
I can only speculate that maybe because the mainstream media, senior figures within the mainstream media are implicated in some way, that they've been reluctant to cover this story.
Following further revelations about the propaganda activities of the Integrity Initiative, at the end of January the organisation removed its page from the internet. Nevertheless, activists continue to publish internal documents exposing the group's activities in the United Kingdom and across the world. Pablo Navarrete, Telesur, London.
Zimbabwe's President Emerson Mnangagwa has insisted on a post-election dialogue aimed at alleviating the country's deepening crisis. More than 20 parties have joined. However, the main opposition leader, Nelson Chamisa, has not.
Our gathering together today is a milestone, which should always remind us of the supremacy of dialogue over conflict and of collaboration over confrontation as instruments for nation building.
Nigerian presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar says he will restore peace in the country. During a rally in the city of Maiduguri, the former vice president promised normality will return to Nigeria's northeast, the most affected area by the attacks of Boko Haram. He has also promised to create new jobs and to reactivate the country's economy.
I promise you that each and everybody will be able to return back to his or her locality. We will create jobs opportunities for them. Our schools will be reopened and we will provide hospitals with good facilities.
And the Chinese community in Peru's Iquitos has welcomed the Lunar New Year with a traditional dinner. In the heart of the Peruvian Amazon, Iquitos has a Chinese community with some 400 members. From dumplings to roasted chicken and pork, the community celebrated the Chinese New Year by bringing traditional dishes to a Chinese hall built back in 1930. Peru is amongst the main countries in the region with a large Chinese community. With that, we come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories from our website at telesurenglish.net. And we're on social media as well, so go ahead and follow us. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.